And here is a picture of the era when I interviewed Donald J. Trump, the businessman.
Former ABC News White House correspondent Sam Donaldson is working for a cure, and it's personal.
And so when the Moffat people told me they thought their mission was to cure cancer, I said, I'm your boy. I'm your boy. Deal me in.
Well, there are lots of miracles here.
Yes.
His one-time rival, former CBS News White House correspondent Phil Jones, is now on the same team, fighting for the same cause.
And I can remember tears, because when you're told that you may not make it, matter of fact, my chances, I was told that if I didn't have a bone marrow stem cell transplant, that I had maybe a maximum of 18 months.
Today on 50 Plus Prime, two of America's celebrated journalists, both cancer survivors, talk about their commitment to a Florida hospital working for a cure. Thank you for joining us. I'm Tony Fama. Vietnam and Watergate were two of the defining political stories of the baby boomer era. And the two network news correspondents who were as involved as any in reporting those stories were Phil Jones of CBS News and Sam Donaldson of ABC News. Both men are former White House correspondents. Both men are multiple Emmy Award-winning journalists. Although each man considered the other a friendly rival, both men have come together to fight a common enemy. Jones and Donaldson are cancer survivors, and they're united in supporting a Florida hospital as it works to treat and cure cancer.
Most of our problems today started with the Vietnam War.
Phil Jones was a CBS News correspondent for 32 years. This is a film clip of his reporting from Vietnam in 1972.
Finally, they get a glimpse of the most beautiful sight they've seen in 3 days. The choppers that are carrying their replacements, and the birds that will haul them out of the field.
Jones covered Watergate. He covered the most powerful U.S. senators of his day, including South Carolina's Strom Thurmond and North Carolina's Jesse Helms.
He caught the attention of conservative North Carolina back in the 60s.
He covered the Iran Contra Affair during the Reagan administration and the impeachment of President Bill Clinton. But it was during the Vietnam War that Jones said today's political cynicism began.
It was there that drugs were introduced to young people. It was there that politicians, officials, the White House lied to the American public about what was going on, and they kept claiming we were winning in Vietnam when we weren't.
Ronald Reagan's first term, the Soviets were very afraid of him. At his first press conference, he was asked whether he thought the Soviets wanted world domination or détente and all of that. And he said, well, they lie, they cheat, they steal.
Sam Donaldson was an ABC News correspondent for 46 years. He covered the Reagan White House here during a 1986 news conference.
Sam?
Mr. President, when you had the arms embargo on, you were asking other nations, our allies particularly, to observe it publicly. But at the same time, privately, you concede you were authorizing a breaking of that embargo by the United States. How can you justify this duplicity?
I don't think it was duplicity.
He covered the Clinton White House, often traveling with the president.
And we also will have failed to make the most of America's promise.
Some critics on the right say Washington can't solve local problems.
And he was a regular contributor on ABC's This Week with David Brinkley from 1981 through 1996.
The thing that's driven money, of course, in politics is television time.
In 2009, Donaldson retired from ABC News.
I don't miss it because life is a parabola. Started here, was very fortunate, luck. Better to be lucky than smart. Up here, and then I'm over here. And I'm enjoying this time because I have no alternative. Oh, I could say, oh, I'm bitter because I'm no longer in the mix. The heck with the mix.
Sam Donaldson and Phil Jones are now on the same team. Each man is a cancer survivor, and each man is an advocate for Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida, home to some of the world's leading cancer research and treatment.
Without Moffitt Cancer Center, I wouldn't be here talking to you today.
And so when the Moffitt people told me they thought their mission was to cure cancer, I said, I'm your boy. I'm your boy. Deal me in.
For Phil Jones, who retired from CBS News in 2001,
the biggest story was no longer all that stuff that I had reported on CBS. It was the day I went into my doctor and he said that you have MDS, myelodysplasia, and there is no real cure for it at your age.
Jones, who covered combat in Vietnam, was not about to shrink from this fight. With that diagnosis, Jones and his wife visited one of the nation's leading cancer treatment hospitals.
After 2 days there, the doctor brought us in, looked at us, and said, I would not recommend a bone marrow stem cell transplant for you. We definitely would not do it here. You are too old. I was 75.
No was not an option for Jones. Next, he visited Dr. Claudio Anicetti at Moffitt Cancer Center.
But Phil was absolutely fit. He had no heart disease, no lung problems, and no blood pressure, no diabetes. He was fit, he was active, and he wanted to go for a cure.
At Moffitt, Jones was accepted for a bone marrow stem cell transplant. A stem cell match was found from an unrelated donor.
On July 4th, 2012, I was the first 75-year-old that they had ever transplanted here at Moffitt. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, the nurse came through the door with this bag of blood. Looked like he was going to get a blood transfusion. In that bag were the cells for life, my life. Never forget it. It was the best July 4th I've ever had.
For 1 year after surgery, Jones continued drug therapy.
The disease has been in remission since. I think it's very unlikely that the disease will come back. We can never say in cancer, but at this point, it looks like a long-standing remission.
It's a miracle. I mean, I can't describe it any other way.
Mr. Jones, how are you?
Good to see you.
Tim Kilrain.
Another miracle.
Yes, as you are.
Hi, Lori Pahokee.
Hi, Lori. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Jones has joined Moffitt's board of advisors. During our visit, he met with 2 Moffitt patients who, like him, label themselves Moffitt miracles.
But I just never expected it to be me. You know,
Lori Pahokee was an active high school girls basketball coach when she was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a manageable but incurable form of cancer. She began what's called immunotherapy at Moffitt Cancer Center.
I had a good response to the first. Because it's in my bone marrow, I can't ever get rid of it. But the lymph node shrunk, the spleen shrunk. I had a lesion in my shoulder, and that disappeared.
Tim Kilrain, who was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma spreading through his torso and into his left lung, also began immunotherapy at Moffitt.
I had a very positive outcome from the treatments, and my cancer was in fact shrinking in every area very quickly. And so I continued that treatment for exactly 1 year. And exactly 1 year later, from the day of my first infusion, I was in complete remission.
Are they frozen or are they still in culture?
Dr. Frederick Locke is Moffitt's research director for immune cell therapy. He describes immunotherapy as the process of redirecting or stimulating the body's immune system to help fight cancer cells.
We actually take the T cells, which are immune system cells that go around, float in our blood, hang out in our lymph nodes. We take those out of the cancer patient's body from their blood, reprogram them with a gene. We redirect them. We put a little GPS navigation system inside the T cells, and then we infuse them back into the patient's body, and they know where to go. They attack the cancer. They've been reprogrammed to fight against the cancer itself.
Well, there are lots of miracles here. Yes. Everything in life, when we face some trouble, there's always a silver lining if you look hard enough for it. And in my case, the silver lining was that I gained a new family, the Moffitt family.
When we come back, our conversation with Sam Donaldson at his home in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We'll discuss his cancer diagnosis, how he beat the disease, and why he's joined Team Moffitt. Welcome back. When Sam Donaldson retired from ABC News in 2009, Charlie Gibson, then the network's anchor of World News, was quoted in the Washington Post as saying that most people, and I'm quoting here, saw Sam's bluster, but underneath, he absolutely has a heart of gold, close quote. Now, personally, I can tell you this much. I met with Donaldson at his home in Albuquerque, New Mexico not too long ago, and he was as kind and gracious as a host can be. We spoke about his 1995 cancer diagnosis and why he agreed to become an advocate for Moffitt Cancer Center. Sam Donaldson hasn't covered the White House since President Bill Clinton's second term, but presidential politics is still very much on his mind. I see that incredible photo of you with our general, Colin Powell.
Colin Powell.
Yes.
I love Colin Powell. I thought he should be president. I wanted him to run in 1996. He decided not to.
The focus of my discussion with Donaldson began 1 year prior to that time, in 1995.
One night I was taking a shower and I was soaping myself and I felt in my groin a lump that I think hadn't been there before. Of course it had, but I hadn't realized that. Well, I thought this was unusual and I also thought this can't be good.
ABC News with anchors Diane Sawyer in New York, Sam Donaldson in Washington.
Remember, this is during the time that Donaldson was co-host with Diane Sawyer of ABC's popular Primetime Live. Donaldson met with a doctor.
He took a look and he said, what's this down here on your ankle? I said, well, that's a blemish that was removed in 1988. I said, and as a matter of fact, they tested it to see whether it was already turning into a melanoma, and they sent it to 3 laboratories, and all laboratories said no. Well, the doctor said, maybe they were wrong. We better take a look. And sure enough, that was a lymph node that was consumed with melanoma, which had come obviously from a primary in 1988.
Donaldson visited the National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland, and Dr. Stephen Rosenberg.
As it turned out, he had a protocol, and he said, you fit the protocol. We'll take care of you here. And I said, now, Dr. Rosenberg, if we break any rule to get me in, a television personality, we don't have to worry about the melanoma. The cancer will kill the rest of us because it'll come from my colleagues in the news business. And he said, no, that's all right.
Donaldson was treated at the National Cancer Institute, where all of the superficial lymph nodes in his right groin were removed, including the cancerous one.
Only that one had melanoma in it. In fact, after 3 days, he came into my hospital room and he said, it's good news. He said, it couldn't be better. It couldn't be better. He said, only one lymph node involved and all of the surrounding tissue appears to be okay.
In the 24 years since, Donaldson has been cancer-free.
This is just a picture of the last ball at Moffitt. Mike Love, they had a group that I really knew something about. That is the Beach Boys.
Yes. Wow.
Now, in recent years, they've had groups, who? What's this? I don't know anything about the kids that go wild about it. That's fine.
Donaldson, who later became Moffitt Cancer Center's first chairperson of the Board of Advisors, credits then Florida Senator Connie Mack with introducing him to the hospital.
I said, yes, Senator. He said, Sam, I understand you have melanoma. I said, yes, sir, that's the diagnosis. He said, don't worry about it. He said, I had 6 years ago melanomas all over my body, my skin. It was not metastases in any way. And he said, they're all gone now, and I'm just fine, and you will be too. Well, the name Connie Mack, at that moment and forever after, is emblazed in my heart. I would follow him almost to hell. So when he called me, said, you know, I'd like you to see this cancer center in Florida that we've got going, the Moffitt Center.
Donaldson visited Moffitt and met with hospital leaders.
They said, we'd like you to form an advisory group. Now, of course, advisory groups don't advise. They raise money and they spread the word about something. And I said, well, let me ask you a few questions, and I did. And the key question was, what's your goal here? What's your mission? Well, they said, obviously, we take care of patients. We do what we can for them. We have a hospital side of it. But, they said, we also have scientists here, and our mission is to cure cancer. And I love that.
Sam Donaldson served as chairperson of Moffitt's advisory board for 7 years until 2010, and he remains an active Moffitt supporter. In our next segment, how Sam Donaldson and Phil Jones together are helping the hospital build its reputation. That's when we come back. Since 1999, Moffitt Cancer Center has been ranked as one of the top 25 cancer centers in the country by U.S. News & World Report. As it works to find a cure for cancer, Moffitt has received more than $46 billion in grant funding for research. With high-visibility supporters like Sam Donaldson and Phil Jones on board, the work in raising funds, though it's never simple, is made just a bit easier. Dr. Alan List is Chief Executive Officer at Moffitt Cancer Center, and he's grateful that Sam Donaldson and Phil Jones are on his team.
Well, their kind of high-profile exposure, see the people in the community and people around Florida and the Southeast see that, and they see if they are supportive of us, then perhaps they should too. So it really does bring a great validation for us.
Most people know me as a reporter and commentator, but I'm also a cancer survivor.
Sam Donaldson appeared in this public service announcement on behalf of Moffitt Cancer Center.
I went home and told my wife, I think I have about 3 months. Well, I was wrong.
The interactive video studio at Moffitt Cancer Center, one location that can connect to a worldwide audience.
And Phil Jones was the idea man behind Moffitt's production studio.
Based on my suggestion, they built a studio here where doctors can go to that studio, and local television stations all over the state, all over the country, can dial in with satellite and do a live interview.
Moffitt Cancer Center opened in Tampa, Florida in 1986. It's named after Lee Moffitt, a former Speaker of the Florida House of Representatives and the driving force behind the center. Sam Donaldson, the former ABC News sleuth, shared the backstory about how Lee Moffitt and then Florida Governor Bob Graham agreed to move ahead with hospital development. Donaldson said it had a little something to do with a proposed 10% cut the Florida legislature was considering to the governor's office budget.
Bob Graham called Lee Moffitt and said, Lee, you know I'm not a spendthrift. You know I watch the pennies here very carefully. 10% doesn't sound like a lot, but I need that money. Can you sort of, before it comes to my desk, can you get it restored? And I'm told, he said, well, Governor, I agree with you. I know you're not a spendthrift, and I'll do what I can. Now, while I've got you on the line, can we talk about that cancer center I want? And sure enough, Graham got the money restored, and Lee Moffitt got the cancer center money, and the rest is history.
Moffitt Cancer Center has since treated Americans from every state in the Union and people from 130 countries worldwide. Its research is advancing a positive trend.
In the last 40, 50 years, we have been improving the proportion of patients who are cured with cancer by about 1% per year.
And at Moffitt, with greater understanding of immunotherapy, the future is looking especially bright.
Immunotherapy has been around for a long, long time, but the problem is we didn't know how to use it. We didn't understand the molecular regulation of immune response to cancer. That's been detailed over the last 10 to 15 years, and now we've seen so many new breakthroughs.
I also expect more of these cellular immunotherapies, like CAR T-cell therapy, to be approved for other cancers, not just leukemia and lymphoma, but for multiple myeloma and solid tumors as well.
For these two former network news competitors, now committed to the same cause, a lighthearted look back at their days in the trenches.
I covered the White House and during President Ford, last of Nixon and President Ford. And there's this picture of me chasing President Ford towards Air Force One. And that's long before Sam Donaldson came along, chasing presidents. So I always tell him, you know, that I taught him how to do it.
Well, maybe Phil taught me something. I'm happy to take from whatever source information will help me out. Actually, my first president was John F. Kennedy. I went down occasionally, I think 3 times, to his press conferences. Sat in the back of the auditorium, which was at the State Department in those days. Never had the courage to try to ask him a question.
That was 56 years ago. With today's scientific advances in combating cancer, Phil Jones speaks for Sam Donaldson and all cancer survivors.
And I pinch myself every day to say, I'm lucky. I'm blessed.
You'll remember we introduced you to Lori Pahokee, the former high school girls basketball coach diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Lori's treatment at Moffitt in managing her cancer has gone so well that she's going to nursing school. I'm Tony Fama. This is 50 Plus Prime. Thank you for joining us.
Pat Moynihan, Democratic senator from New York. I mean, these people were big thinkers. And on the Republican side, you have Jacob Javits from New York, you had Everett Dirksen, you had Howard Baker, you had Bob Dole.
Anyone who runs for the presidency, seriously, it's the only thing they do. I mean, the family, any other business is of no consequence. They have to be dedicated and they have to feel an urge. Some people say, oh, they have a Messiah complex. Not all of them do, but all of them think, I'm the guy or the gal who can run this country best.